casting a dark cloud over tourism in the Sunshine State. We're diving into how a slowdown in international visitors is being felt in a region fueled by its tourism economy, and whether shifts in political policies could play a part. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. The state's official tourism marketing agency, Visit Florida, reports a decrease in international travelers during the first quarter of this year compared to last. Orlando is the most visited tourist destination in the country. More than 75 million people came last year. Visit Orlando is the official tourism association for the city. Their senior director of market research and insights, Maria Henson, presented a travel forecast to the Tourist Development Council in Orange County at the end of June.
Now, this is a little bit more of a cloud. International travel. I don't have to tell this group what's going on in the world. So Tourism Economics, who is a very respected provider of forecasting for the travel to the United States, has released their forecast just literally a couple of months ago, saying that they're expecting a 9% drop in visitation from international markets into the United States. Now, that is going to feel differently across the country. And we're hoping that we're going to be ones insulated from some of that with all of our activity and our market and our products. Right now they're saying it's going to be 8% drop, and I'm going to touch base on it just a little bit deeper in the next couple of minutes here. Canada is going to account for the largest loss. And that is definitely not an if, it's more of a how much.
The same report from Visit Orlando shows that Canada is the top international market to Orlando. Sandra Pappas is a former Disney cast member who now owns Click the Mouse Travel, a Canadian agency that specializes in travel planning to Central Florida and its theme park attractions. She is seeing a significant drop in bookings to the area. Pappas joins Engage to discuss how perception and politics are impacting business, in particular concerns about U.S. immigration and border crossing policies.
So we are definitely down in our bookings, and also we're down in our future bookings. So overall, we're down about 10% from last year at this time. And if you go into 2026, we're down 20+%, which is really unfortunate for us because our whole business is based on visiting Central Florida.
Where else are they going? Where are they going instead if they don't want to go to Central Florida?
Believe it or not, there's been an uptick in Disneyland Paris. We do have a lot of European cruisers now because Disney is in Europe right now. And we did notice an increase in the Alaskan sailings, which is actually leaving from Vancouver, Canada.
Are you picking up on a deliberate effort to avoid Florida or the United States or Orlando? What are you seeing?
Unfortunately, it has been deliberate because the feedback from clients/guests has been for the political reason.
What kind of things are you hearing from your clients?
Well, a lot of them don't want to spend their money in the U.S. right now. We've had feedback on immigration in crossing the border. I guess there's a lot of news stories up here about difficulties crossing the border and people being stopped more than before. More scrutiny when you're crossing and what you're bringing back or your purpose of your trip. They've also cut down on, I think there was a policy that was released that if you're there for more than 30 days, then you have to get a form and get your fingerprints taken. So it's just the difficulty for something that used to be quite easy has changed quite a bit.
How concerned are you about the impact of this U.S.-Canadian policy relationship on your business with Central Florida in the coming years?
Extremely. It's almost feels when it first started, it felt like a little like COVID. I mean, nothing was fully shut down, which is even harder for us because everything is still open. Unfortunately, I feel that sometimes the media does like to blow things up a little bigger than they are because everybody wants those clicks and the views. So I'm sure like a story that might not have been something that was a big deal a few years back is now getting more eyes on it because of the situations that are happening between the two countries.
Do you see any path forward that could change this dynamic?
That's a great question. If I was a political leader, I'm sure I'd have a lot of answers to that. I'm just hoping that the relationship between the two countries goes back a few years the way it was. And I mean, we've always been great neighbors, and the Canadians just love visiting Florida. So I really hope that that can return to the way it was before.
Is there anything you would say, if given the opportunity, to officials here in Florida about what you wish they better understood about international tourists who want to come from Canada?
Honestly, because 'cause I'm a snowbird, so I am down there a lot in the winter, and I found that there was not an awareness of what is happening globally. I don't know why, but I just feel like nobody down there was informed as much as we were up here of the situation and what was happening with the trade wars and everything. So I almost wish there was more of an awareness down there of what the situation is. And I know Arizona's working on greeting Canadians more. I know, I think somewhere in California, they want to, like, embrace us and welcome us back, and there maybe needs to be something that makes Canadians feel safer, crossing the border and when we're down there. I honestly feel when you actually go down and visit, it's the same as it always was, but I there's a fear that's being instilled in travelers, and I kind of wish that that wasn't happening right now. It's unfortunate with social media and everything. Sometimes you don't know if you're getting the full story or half story or just the headline. So I don't know what, Visit Orlando or Central Florida or Kissimmee can do, but an awareness to maybe greet us or greet, international tourists a little. They might have to just push a little harder right now in order to make people feel more comfortable to travel there.
We interviewed a couple lives in Mexico, kind of the same thing, organizing vacations. And they said the same thing about just this misinformation on social media really impacting their clients.
It's true. It's unfortunate, but it's true. It's like it's the headline that people don't read the story. And, a Canadian stopped here and et cetera, got sent to like, we don't know the whole story. They might have, visited a friend, but the way that people skew titles sometimes, you just read the title of the headline and you're like, "Oh, this happened to so and so. Did you hear that?" And so that's the problem. Unfortunately, clicks are king right now on social media platforms.
Anything else you think you'd want to add just in terms of what you counsel your clients in this climate?
Well, the best thing for us is as an agency, we're still traveling. Nothing has changed for any of us. So I'm hoping that that gives our clients a sense of relief to know that, hey, there's still people traveling. Nothing's happening to them. They're still enjoying everything they used to. I think seeing us travel is the big deal. I think it's so super important to let them know that it's still okay to travel. And like I said, it is the media, the social media, the headlines that I think are making people quite nervous.
Sandra Pappas owns Click the Mouse Travel, moving from the northern border to the southern now. Earlier this month, ICE officials detained a Mexican tourist in Orlando with a valid tourist visa and sent him to the Everglades detention center known as Alligator Alcatraz. He was released this week without being charged. In light of the detention, the Mexican consulate in Orlando warned visitors to take precautions if traveling to Florida, cautioning them to be safe and always carry their documents with them. Based on the number of visitors, Mexico is in the top 5 international markets for tourism in Orlando. Marta Garza owns Once Upon a Wish Travel in Mexico. She and her husband, Esteban Gonzalez, joined Engage to talk about their agency's focus on Central Florida and what trends they're seeing in bookings.
In the last couple of years, we've seen kind of like a steady demand or interest on travelers. Probably the last few months, there were some concerns, no, about the news, and people were a little bit, what they wanted to have a little bit more certainty on how things were happening. But overall, I think in the last few months, we've seen a steady demand.
What kind of questions would you get from clients about those concerns you just mentioned?
Well, they were pretty much concerned on if it was safe, no, and if something could happen to them, because there was a lot of news that they didn't know if everything was true or not. No, they were news, or there were posts on social media that were saying that anyone could be targeted regardless if they have a valid status or not. So they were a little bit cautious on that. We had a few people that decided to wait until there was more clarity to make their trip. We have a couple that canceled, mostly on people that were planning on going to California. I think for Orlando, we didn't see any demand. People had questions, but they didn't change plans in our experience. And we even have a few people going there the last few months, and they had a great time. We didn't hear any complaints. We had people going to Orlando and Fort Lauderdale, and we didn't hear anything from them.
What kind of advice can you give these clients bringing up concerns? What do you tell them?
I think we normally try to be cautious as well on what we tell them. No, normally what we tell them is whatever they feel safer with, they should go with that. At the end of the day, for us and the people that we work with, they are going on vacation. They are going to have the time of their lives. No, so if there's something there that doesn't make them feel that like they're gonna have that, we ask them to wait or to reconsider their plan until they do.
I want to ask you about something that happened here recently. The Mexican consulate here in Orlando recently sent out an alert encouraging travelers to stay aware during trips to Florida. Does that have any impact on your business?
I think it does. I mean, for that one, as I understand it, it was not the consulate or like the official Mexican government. I think it was the consul that made a statement on his social media. And then he made a second statement a few days after, even recommending people to visit the Disney parks and things like that. I think, of course, it has an impact to some degree, but not because of the warning or the statement by itself, but because of the uncertainty that it reflects.
How much do you think misinformation is playing a role in what your clients are worried about, what they're talking to you about, what they're experiencing?
I think the world we live in every day requires more than people is able to fact check and be selective on what they choose to believe. Normally, truth has two sides. No, it's a story with two sides. And I think people should be empathetic enough to realize that and to understand to a degree, no, the other side. And I also think in there's a responsibility on the people that have access to these platforms, the influential people, the people in position of power. I think they should realize as well. I hope they realize as well. They have a responsibility on this, and that they act accordingly to make sure the conditions are right for people to be able to make those judgments with the most certain information.
What do you wish tourism officials here better understood about international tourists visiting from Mexico?
We believe the law should be respected equally, no, by local and foreigners. And I think what we would ask the tourist authorities is to work with all the other U.S. authorities to make sure that the law is respected. And if it's not, that it is enforced in a way that it's in line with the same law, no? In respecting the universal human rights. I would say that most of the travelers that are visiting Orlando, in our experience, of course, they are going there and they're making a huge effort to have a magical time with their kids and their families. And I think it's fair that they shouldn't have to worry about their safety for any reason, no?
Marta Garza and Esteban Gonzalez operate the Once Upon a Wish travel agency in Monterrey, Mexico. To understand how these trends in international travel to Central Florida impact our local economy, Hank Fishkind, president of Fishkind Consulting in Orlando, joins Engage. He has decades of experience in economic analysis and forecasting as an economist. We talk about the impact of international visitors and the ripple effects of policy changes and global conditions.
Canada provides about 3 to 5% of the tourist volume, 7 to 10% of the value of the spending. Mexico is a smaller component, but still significant. Total international travel is about 15% of the total share.
What happens if there is a drop in international tourists? What are the ripple effects to Central Florida?
Well, they're significant because international tourists generally spend more per capita than domestic tourists. And any reduction in the volume of tourism has a significant impact on our economy, given our dependence upon tourism.
Would you say that there is anything different about Central Florida compared to other areas? I'm thinking about the fact that we are so heavily dependent on tourism. We had Epic Universe open in May. Are people still going to want to visit Disney World regardless?
Yes, absolutely. And we'll still want to visit Central Florida regardless. What we've seen historically is when we've had big openings of either parks or even big rides, there's a significant increase, stair step up, if you will, of tourist volume. And that tends to stay within the market.
When we're looking at the correlations between policies, political policy and tourism, have you seen a direct correlation? Have you seen something like this happen before? Is that what is happening now?
Yes, and yes. And we have seen it before. We've seen it recently during COVID when Governor DeSantis decided to ban cruise ships that weren't banned in other places. We had a substantial drop in tourism as a result. The last time we had something of this nature was during the first Trump administration with the foreign travel ban, and there was a noticeable drop in international tourism as a result of it. And international tourists spend more per person than our domestic tourists. So when we have a reduction in international tourism, it does have a noticeable effect upon the marketplace.
Visit Orlando in a presentation to the tourist board in Orange County. They also predicted, in addition to a reduction in international travelers this year, they do expect to rebound next year. Is there any way for you to predict any kind of future patterns here?
Yes. Relative to the Canadian economy, it will take some time for the impact of our policies to dissipate. Canadians are very upset. I can tell you from personal experience, I have a business in Canada. So, I hear difficult things, and it will take a number of years for that to dissipate. Secondly, Canada is going to go into a significant recession next year, not only because of our tariffs, but also because of certain things going on in their own economy. So I do not think the outlook for Canadian tourism is very good for next year. Relative to other countries, it somewhat depends upon our policies, but our immigration policies are also having a dramatic effect on reducing the desire of foreigners to come to the United States because of the difficulty of getting visas and the threats of our immigration policy.
Therefore, does international tourism also affect job creation in Central Florida?
Yes, that's the end consequence. There would be less job creation, and less wage growth than would otherwise be the case, Sharon. The other effect is it'll affect the volume of flights coming in and out of Orlando International Airport, with some consequences on the airport as well, and the trends there. But otherwise, no, I think we've got it covered pretty well, Sharon.
Do local governments, do the tourism agencies, do they react to change in political policies? Will they make more of an effort to attract international tourists?
Yeah, they'll try, but I think it's going to be very difficult to overcome. Look, if it costs double the amount of money and takes double, triple the amount of time for anybody just to get a visa, it's going to have a negative effect. And then the current policies of the government relative to immigration also give people pause who might want to otherwise come to visit. I mean, so why, if you're planning a visit here, why don't, go to Toronto, go to Montreal, go to, Acapulco. And so there's going to be substitution for people who want to travel.
Economist Hank Fishkind is president of Fishkind Consulting in Orlando. If you work in tourism here, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What's your perspective about what you're seeing? Send an email to engage@cfpublic.org or send a talkback on the free Central Florida Public Media app. Still ahead here on Engage, a race against time to preserve a critical piece of Black history in Central Florida. Hear from the volunteers maintaining often overlooked Black cemeteries in the state. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Ahead on this program, we examine the intersection of our dietary habits and our mental health. But first, strings of Black cemeteries across Florida are maintained by volunteer community members. They dedicate their time to preserving the memory and physical resting place for those sometimes forgotten. One of these efforts is underway in Oak Hill, Florida, in Volusia County. That's where work is underway to find unmarked graves. As Central Florida Public Media's Luis Alfredo Garcia reports, the goal is to preserve the history before Florida's elements and future development take over.
It's around 10 a.m. on a weekday morning. 5 people with shovels in hand surround a sunken grave.
Does this one have any type of metal on it also?
Spence Yoen digs up dirt and sand. He's been looking for unmarked graves and trying to identify the unknown at Saints and Sinners Cemeteries in Oak Hill. Yoen has already been at it for about an hour. The bugs are an annoyance, but he works through it and finds something new. An engraving.
There's like grapes on this side, so I mean you can actually see.
Yoen is president of the Saints and Sinners Cemeteries Association. He's now in his mid-50s, but has been tending to these grounds ever since he was young. This time, the Florida Public Archaeology Network is out here with him, helping to locate unmarked graves. Emily Jane Murray is an archaeologist. They're using ground-penetrating radar to find the potential graves. Murray says this work never gets old.
There's just always more to find and always more to do, which I guess is like, it's not surprising, but then it is surprising. So you never know what you're going to find. That looks like some sort of decorative something.
Is
that a number?
Not.
Oh God, that is chocked full of rebar.
These cemeteries were never formally mapped. Oak Hill was once the home of a school and church built by a free black man. The Saints Cemetery is where church members were buried, while Sinners was for non-members. Everyone buried here is black. Combined, the cemeteries cover about 7 acres of sandy, grassy land. Joanne Welch is one of the volunteers. She says cemeteries like this need help from the community to be preserved.
The hands-on, boots on the ground is the more important part. These people were alive like us at one point in time, and we'll never know anything about them.
The city of Oak Hill used to use the site as a dump. Walking through, bullet holes are visible next to name engravings. Back in 2003, community members began to take notice and care for the facilities. A few years ago now, local lawmakers agreed to develop 415 acres surrounding the cemeteries. Although Welch says the developers have been transparent and genuine, she still has her worries. There'll be new houses, new people, and she anticipates there'll be new floods that could damage all of the preservation work.
Look how beautifully, or to think how reverent people were and how much they cared. Kind of mind-blowing.
Saints and Sinners is part of the Black Cemeteries Network. It helps preserve and share the history of cemeteries like these across the country. In Florida, 35 cemeteries are members. Nearly 200 are dotted nationwide. Back at one of the newly uncovered graves at Saints and Sinners, volunteer Spence Yoen says the work must continue.
I just don't want it sinking anymore.
But on this day, progress isn't straightforward. The team has decided to rebury this site to prevent it from sinking more from lack of support.
I would put the dirt back around it.
Yeah, that's what
because I think it's going to be more secure.
Yeah.
Since 2024, more than 50 potential unmarked graves have been found here. The team can't confirm anyone is buried until they dig a little more. That'll come later. Luis Alfredo Garcia, Central Florida Public Media.
And Luis joins us in studio now. Can you talk to me about just what brought this story to your attention?
For sure, yeah. Thank you for having me. Something that really brought this story to my attention is something I've noticed in newsrooms. There's a tendency to cover Black stories only during Black History Month. And that's something I feel I have to be very conscious of as I'm working. You know, am I blind to what's going on around me outside of significant dates? So I was looking around. I was looking at some preservation efforts. I had a cemetery story fall through about a year ago. So it's something that's always been evergreen on my mind. And I'm looking around Florida. I find this site called the Black Cemetery Network. It's essentially a compilation of Black cemeteries in the state of Florida. There's I want to say 38 in the state that are enrolled. And I couple of them on the eastern central coast caught my eye, one in Titusville, one in Oak Hill, and one by Edgewater. And that's really where I developed the story. I reached out to all 3 cemeteries. They were all in various states of being preserved, as in I didn't get a call back, an email back from one of them. One of them is currently being kept up. It's not decrepit. It's just come a long way from where it used to be. Still a lot of work to go. And then the last one is like a family-owned cemetery, and it was just so interesting to see the 3 levels that these places were all at.
When we're looking at the number of these cemeteries that exist in our region, are there more than we realize?
For sure. I honestly have no idea how many there are. Like I was saying, the Black Cemeteries Network, there's 38 enrolled in the state, but this is something you apply for. You know, this is something they don't look out. I mean, they might look out every once in a while, but you have to send in an application. You have to talk to the coordinator. It's run out of the University of South Florida. So at one of the cemeteries I visited, Davis Memorial, there's a cemetery right next to it that's also a historically Black cemetery. It's not enrolled in the network. It's, you know, I live in Orlando. It's not something I was actively aware of. And I feel like there's these pockets of communities. You know, if you live directly somewhere, you might know that there's a cemetery around you. You might not know that it's historically Black. You might not know who's taking care of it. And it's something I really have no idea about. There's about more than 2,000 cemeteries in the Florida Master Site File. But, you know, that doesn't say who owns it, doesn't say who's buried there. Some of the cemeteries don't even have online archives to even search them up.
What do we know then about who is buried there, the people and the communities that are represented?
Yeah, so the Saints and Sinners cemeteries, they're an offshoot kind of a church that was there. It was founded by a freed Black man. He founded a school, a church there. And so Saints is the smaller cemetery. It's about half an acre. And that's where members of the church were buried. So these were people who attended the church. We don't have specifics. There are some specific names. The turpentine business was big there. The citrus business was big there. So researchers assume that there are turpentine workers, citrus workers, and just community members. The other cemetery, Sinners, it's like 6.5 acres about. This one's bigger. This one is more spread out. There's pockets of graves. There's little buckets that just say unknown child on them. And, you know, it's hard to find the history on that. This is an unknown child. They were unknown at the time that this marker was placed. How do you go back and find who this child was, who their parents were? You know, there's some big graves that clearly mark somebody significant in the community, somebody who maybe had an impact in the community. There's no name. There's no name attached. Researchers that I've talked to in the area, people who keep up with the cemetery, they know that there's you know, turpentine workers, citrus workers, babies, community members, former church members, but a lot of the specifics are lost, you know?
Yeah. I want to know more about the cemetery associations. What do they value in preserving these cemeteries? You know, what space do they see them occupying in these communities?
They kind of see them as 2 things. One, just history. A lot of these associations, a lot of these places, they value the history, not just because it's the city's history, but because it's the history of a community that's marginalized. It's not like one day they woke up and said, oh, you know, we want to have an all-Black cemetery. It's something they were kind of forced into. They weren't allowed to be in the other cemeteries. This is something brought up by the community. In both cemeteries I visited, Davis Memorial and Saints and Sinners, they were both founded by either a freed Black man or kept up by his descendants. You know, right now, one of the cemeteries I visited, it's a descendant of a free Black man, and his big thing is he's a historian. He thinks it's important to keep up with this history. He thinks it's important to keep up with families who haven't visited. He will go out of his way to track down a family, to call them and be like, hey, you know, I don't know if you know this, but somebody in your family from 100 years ago is buried here. Would you like to come out and visit them? Things like that is really important to the community, and it's like the top priority. You know, the upkeep is nice, obviously the physical resting place, but they want to know who these people are, who these people were, and who their families are.
Louis, is there anything else moving forward that interested you about these preservation efforts and what's coming next?
Oh my goodness, yes. So Saints and Sinners, there's 415 acres surrounding it that's planned to be developed. That means 800 to 900 new houses, new residents. Some people are concerned about new flood patterns. It's a whole thing that, unfortunately, you know, I'm not going to be here in Orlando to keep track of. I'm not going to be here in Central Florida. But it's something that they're actively thinking of, and it's something that really piqued my interest with them specifically. They say the developers have been genuine, transparent. They say the city has ramped up efforts. The city recently partnered with them to host the Memorial Day event in the cemetery because there's veterans buried there, you know? And it's the increasing communication between the city and the association that really piques my interest.
Luis Alfredo Garcia is our emerging journalist fellow. You may have heard him mention that he will not be in Central Florida. It is his last day.
It's true.
Yes, been with us the last year. We appreciate this story and all the work that you've done for the last year, and wish you nothing from the best, and hope to keep in touch with you, Luis.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you guys for having me. And I will always stay in touch with Central Florida Public Media. No better place I could have started my professional career.
Coming up, food for the soul, how a local chef is serving up healing in more ways than one. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Chef Sierra Donaldson brings purpose and passion to the table. Some of you might recognize the Maitland resident from competing as Chef C on the Food Network. She describes the kitchen as her sanctuary while growing up in a household shaped by trauma and substance abuse. What started as a survival skill has evolved into something that helps others heal too. In addition to being a caterer and founder of Easy Cookin' with C, Donaldson is a mental health therapist who does cooking classes and therapy-infused events. Her doctoral dissertation explores culturally grounded food practices and their impact on mental health disparities in Black communities. One day, she would like to open a wellness center in Orlando. She joins Engage to discuss transforming people's relationship with food and with themselves.
I know growing up, food was a comfort for us, especially for me. I had a lot of difficulties growing up in life. My mother, she was dealing with her own life and things like that, and I had an absent father and things like that. So food became my whirlwind of everything. So when I was sad, I was eating. When I was happy, I was eating, and I utilized it as a tool as comfort. When I was depressed, I was eating. When it came to anything, I enjoyed food just simply because it gave me comfort.
I think that's something that people can relate to in one way or the other. What changed? When did food become something else for you, maybe something more healing?
So it's not until when I moved to Arizona, when I became an adult. And I got my double master's, and I ended up moving to Arizona. And I had a friend there at the time where she was going through a breakup, and she was sad, out, and depressed and things like that. And she was living in Atlanta. And I told her, hey, cancel your lease with him, move out here with me. You ain't even got to worry about anything. Let me just try to help you get a different mindset about life and things like that. She left Atlanta and she came up there, and that's when COVID hit. Boom. She's already depressed. We're in the house now. So I'm like, what can I do to actually be able to like heal her or help her? And the only thing that was open was Walmart. So I can't sit still. I'm not going to lie to you. I just kept on going over there and looking at different ingredients and different things. And I was like, maybe if I just feed her, because I know when I get fed or when I eat, I feel good. So I used to go and find different seasonings and things like that and come back to the house, and I was making her these meals. I eat with my eyes. So if it's not pleasing to my eyes, I won't eat it. So I used to just come and just create different meals that was just in my head and give it to her. And she used to stay in that room. She did not come out. Literally, I started feeding her every single day, back to back, back to back, to suddenly she started coming out the room and giving me recipes like, whoa, Sierra, this is crazy. Like, this tastes so good. And that's when I realized it clicked. I'm like, whoa. If food allowed her to come out the room and allow her to have an actual conversation with me, because mind you, she was up there for a year and she didn't say anything. She was depressed. She was going through a breakup. The fact that food was involved and it allowed her to come out the room to actually speak to me and have different conversation about it, that's when it clicked in my mind. And I was like, whoa, that has a healing aspect to it. And that's when I started going crazy with it.
Tell me more about what you just called going crazy with it. You're also a licensed therapist and a chef. How do those roles combine into what you do now?
Okay, so it's actually a crazy story, Dad. Many people thought I was like so crazy doing it. So, like I said, I was cooking meals for her, and then I started going crazy with it because I knew people out in Arizona. Then I started hitting them up and saying, hey, what if I come cook you a meal? Let me just cook you a meal. Let me just see what you think, because that's her. Let me see somebody else's opinion. I had another friend named Neffy, and she was like, okay, cool, come over. I cooked her shrimp and grits. She went like bonkers for it. She went crazy. She was like, yo, Sierra, it's not the food. I don't know what you do to the food, but I feel loved. Like, I feel like a part of me is being healed. And I was like, wait, what? And that's when I was like, you know what? Maybe I could go crazy with this. Maybe this is something that I need to do, that God told me I need to do. You understand what I'm saying? But I started to think, how can I intertwine the both? Mm-hmm. In the beginning, I didn't know. I know once I did that and everybody loved the food, all the food was gone. My great-grandfather at the time, my great-grandfather, he passed away 2 years ago. He called me and was like, hey, Sierra, randomly, I just want you to come back to Miami. And me, I was like, I'm very family-oriented. So I was like, okay, but I got to figure it out. Because if I was moving back to Miami, I had to create a business. Because everybody knows Miami is hard to live at. Let's be honest. And I was like, okay, cool. People called me crazy because I sold everything. I packed up everything and I drove back to Miami in my little Toyota Corolla. And once that happened, when I say I started going crazy, for instance, the older employers that was working at the post office and things like that, I opened up my place to them 5 o'clock in the morning. Y'all want breakfast before y'all go into work? Come over. I'll cook y'all some breakfast. They started coming over. I started doing that. I was doing meal preps. I was doing that. And then people just kept on saying the healing part about it. Like, Sierra, like, this feels like home. Like, I don't know what it is. I just want to keep coming back.
Yeah.
And it's not until I met this couple, and they're both dealing with diabetes. Mm-hmm. And that's when everything started to switch for me, because now you guys get in the comfort part about it. Where's the actual healing part? I get it. It reminds you of childhood. We all grew up on that. This is cool. But when it comes to the actual healing part, where is that? I got this couple, and they're both dealing with diabetes. And the lady was like, hey, can you make meal preps for us? We don't like to work out. Just being honest with you, me and my husband work from home, and both of us is overweight, and we need to figure this thing out before both of us, yeah. And once I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. Like, I'll do some meal preps. I started doing the research on seasonings, like the proper seasonings, like the natural herbs, how to substitute certain things from that, how to go a non-dairy route and then versus the dairy route, or how to create your own things versus you actually buying things from the store because they come with preservatives and things like that. I started teaching myself. And I said, let me be a guinea pig for myself. I started to switch up everything in my diet. How I eat, how I drink, everything. And mind you, people always look at me as this high energy person. I'm like, oh, Sierra, you're so happy, not knowing that I struggle with a lot of like anxiety and things like that. But I didn't really tell anybody. I just know how to mask it. But it got to a point where I was like, I'm tired of pretending. Let me figure it out. Because if I did it for them, why can't I do it for me? And I did it. Once I did that from January, and that literally happened this year. That was from January to May. I was able to drop at least 40 pounds. And I have my own therapist. As long as I know I'm a licensed therapist as well, but I have my own therapist. And she even noticed the change too. I'm more happier. Mm-hmm. I'm more calmer. Like, I can actually see things through for what it is. I'm not always in my head anymore about a lot of things. And she even asked me, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just changed the way I live. Changed the way I eat. And that's what I mean when I went crazy with it. So I ended up moving here probably like a year and a half ago. Okay. Packed up all my stuff, hopped in the U-Haul, put my car in the back, and I drove here. And I didn't know what was going on. I'm not going to lie to you. I ended up getting a contract job for like therapy, and I was doing my thing. And then I'm like, okay, so what do I do now, God? Like, what do I do now? And it was like, go around to different businesses. Tell them what you do. Just talk to people. Just off of your personality. So I was going into different businesses and ordering food and started talking to the owners. Started talking to the chefs. Literally in there, because I'll come into your restaurant and I'll buy like plethora of food. I'm the only person there. And they want to know, who is this person?
What are you doing?
Yeah, buying all this food. And I started talking and putting my name out there. And they're like, whoa, like, I love your energy. I love what you got going on. Let's talk more. And that's how I ended up making a name for myself in Orlando. And now I just go around and I do big events when it comes to brunches or dinners or even weddings here that I've been doing. I've only been here for a year and a half.
And you also work with kids in the Central Florida area.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about what do you want them to take away from you?
Okay, so when it comes to my kiddos, I love them down. And for them, I always try to instill into them about being able to go after what you want in life, and being able to understand when it comes to food, when it comes to whatever you was grown up with. You know what I'm saying? Whatever was taught to you as a child, you can always flip it as an adult. You can always, research more, because once you start growing older, you realize like the only reason you learn what you learn is simply because that's what they knew. And once you realize that the world is bigger than what you really think it is, the world is yours. And I teach them that. I do a lot of mindfulness cooking with them. I teach kids how to bake, how to cook, and I intertwine that with therapy. And they actually love it, and they've been growing with it.
Yeah. And you're working on your doctorate in social work on culturally grounded food practices in the Black community.
Yes.
I'll just use my father as an example. He grew up, and to this day, he eats fried food. He will eat chitlins. He has this aversion to green vegetables.
Yeah.
But that's what he knew. That's what he grew up with. I'm curious, what are you finding in your research? Anything that's surprising you?
So since I've been doing this, and I'm not even going to lie to you, I've been realizing that's something that's been ingrained in us from slavery. And it's simply because when you actually go back in time, you literally go back in time, you actually read about it, we didn't have access to a lot of things. We had to literally, it's a survival of the fittest. You had to figure out what was there and had to make it something. And with the Black community, I realized everything for us is comfort, because this is all we got to hold on to. Like, it's comfort. And when it comes to these comfort meals, they're meals that's not healthy for us, but makes us feel good. And that's it. And when I realized, okay, this is what started there, and that's nothing but generation after generation after generation that's like has been taught to like eat like this, do that. And then I realized like a lot of people that's around me, they suffer from diabetes or heart attacks or clogged arteries or all type of different things. And I'm like, why in my community, that's all and they're okay with it. I had conversations with people like, you okay with eating like that? Like, well, it made me feel good. I don't care. Like, you tripping, Sierra. Like, I'm all right. And I'm like, but you know your health. Like, you don't want to live. And they're like, everybody got a day. And then I'm just like, the mindset. Like, why do you not want to live? You have one life. And once I started realizing, like, that was a huge issue for my community. And then I started looking, like, even going into the community, like, especially in Miami, going into the city part of Miami. Like, people think Miami is South Beach. No, actually go into, like, the actual city of Miami. You look on the corners and things like that. There's no Whole Foods. There's no farmer markets. I can tell you where to get a Philly cheesesteak. You understand what I'm saying? But there's nothing there that's healthy. There's no resources. There's nothing. It's just setting you up for failure. And I realized once you teach people about certain things, when you know better, you do better. And that's where I come in at.
Any other future projects you're excited about? What's ahead for you?
Yes. So my long-term goal right now, once I become a doctor and things like that, I'm trying to create a wellness center. And I want to be able to do a center where it's open to kids all the way up into adults. And I want to be able to teach them about the healing aspects of food and therapy and why it's prominent for us. I want to be able to teach people about the certain dyes that we do, when it comes to red dye. We're not even supposed to be eating that. You understand? I want to be able to teach women how to eat properly, especially when it comes to trying to conceive kids. People don't even know that too. When you eat certain things, it's harder for women to conceive, or it's harder for them to actually have a natural birth or things like that due to the things that we consume and eat. So I want to be able to have a place where people can come, learn, and want to change their life from the inside in. Because why not live? Why not live a healthy life? Why not live a life where it's beautiful? Because you've got one life. And I want to be able to teach people to understand, to take pride into the life that you have and live it where it's freedom and not stuck in slavery.
Sierra Donaldson, also known as Chef C, is a licensed therapist. That's all for this week's edition of Engage. If you miss any part of the show, all of our shows are available on demand at cfpublic.org or wherever you get your podcasts. And we want to hear from you. Let us know what you'd like to talk more about. Send an email to engage@cfpublic.org. I'm Sharon Stone. Thank you for the company. All Things Considered is coming up following NPR News.